Hi, everyone. I think most of you have already seen me. If you haven't, I'm this guy on the internet. If the internet decides to cooperate, yes. I'm a Chromius on the internet. I'm open source developer. Means that I basically don't have a social life. Instead, I spend it on GitHub. I'm a consultant, and I work for a company called ROAVE. And I will review your patches. If you send me some link, and if I have time, I'll gladly help you get better with your open source project. So please feel free to poke me. Today, I wanted to talk initially about wizards, and my abstract says so, and then I realized, you know what, that's a bit forced. On the other hand, I think we as software developers and as engineers are wizards. Does anybody know this person? Yeah? Yeah. OK, this is Margaret Hamilton. She is standing near the code that ran the Apollo missions, basically. And I think this is a modern-day magician. I think the entire fable of do some magic and some trick and stuff happens is much smaller than what engineering manages to do these days. We manage to build enormous things. We manage to achieve impossible things. We manage to get to a different, big rock in our system. But it is effectively something that nature probably didn't plan for. So we went ahead and surpassed those limits. And then people came up with this is fake and whatever, but that's their problem. There's good humans and bad humans as well. We managed to fight illnesses. We got vaccines. We got medicine that heals stuff for which you would die immediately in the past. Stupid things for which you say, yeah, just go to the pharmacy and you're going to be fine. We used to die for that. And we have other important stuff like Takeshi's Castle. No, OK. Well, I mean, I like Takeshi's Castle, but that's maybe not such a big achievement. OK, so we, as engineers, do incredible things. On the other hand, we mess it up really badly. It is our responsibility as engineer, when we use that word, specifically the word engineer, to ensure the safety of the systems we build is maintained. Now, of course, we do PHP, and most of us, let's be honest, don't work on very critical systems. If somebody messes up a credit card payment, that's not a big deal. I also managed to enter a coupon twice on a website and get stuff for free. Their problem for not having a good QA system and good quality. Better for me, So I'm going to take an extreme example. Does anybody know what this is? Yeah? I mean, this is a 737-800. This is a plane that has been flying for decades. One of these can actually fly for more than a decade. Because honestly, planes are old, and it is impressive that we can make this massive pile of metal junk fly from one side of the planet to the other. Now, what happened is that recently, I don't really know the timelines, Airbus came over and said, oh, we made a new plane, and this plane uses much less fuel, and it goes faster, is more silent, blah, blah, blah. Effectively, pay us money, because we got a better plane. And people, well, airlines started to say, sure, I'm going to buy it. And what happened on the other side is Boeing said, you know what? If airlines start buying everything from Airbus, we're out of business. So how am I going to buy my next Ferrari? My fifth or sixth Ferrari. So this is what business is thinking. Don't get me wrong. There's good businesses, but there's a lot of people that just speculate on stuff. So what happened is that there was a change in requirements. We want a plane that is better, that flies more silent, that uses less fuel, and whatnot. And they came up with this thing. Whoop. This is a 737, sorry, not a 787, 737 MAX. So you saw the news. It's not a happy ending here. But effectively, they said, oh, yeah, we managed to achieve it. Yeah, money. Let's party. We're done with this. This is the achievement. We can sell. Cool. End of the story. To make this happen, though, they had to introduce some system changes. System changes that effectively were applied by introducing a bigger engine. So you see the engine on the top plane is a bit bigger, and they had to move everything a bit up in order to fit it, and they had to change how the plane was working. And let's be honest, aerodynamics is exactly what they call rocket science. When they talk to you about rocket science, this is rocket science. This is the complex engineering. I don't think there's much more complex than this. There are more complicated fields if you work at CERN, maybe. Still, this is where most of the thought in engineering goes. So, the problem here is that these changes that they introduced brought in some problems, which are effectively that the plane needs to go at a certain speed, otherwise it stalls, and the plane accelerates too much and it tries to nose up too much. And when it noses up too much, it stalls. Stalling is effectively when the plane is falling from the sky and you feel that, whoa, what is going on? That is what happens. There was some pressure by business, you know, let's ship, let's deliver. And they went through all the approval process and they said, you know, just ship it and stuff like that. And what happened is that they delivered this plane and they said it's exactly like the previous one. And they didn't tell them that they introduced some new systems to prevent all this stalling stuff. They didn't tell the pilots. So they told them, look, here's a little manual with an update of, you know, just a couple practices. You read it and 2 hours later you can fly. And it was sold like that. It was sold as you don't need to retrain all your pilots in order to fly these planes, so you can just buy them. And then systems break. It is obviously a combination of bugs and physical problems, but effectively what happened is that 2 planes fell from the sky, lots of people died, and the reason was that they introduced a software system that, by forcing the plane when it is nosing up too much, pushes it down. And there is a button to disable this stuff. There is just one button, one stupid button, to shut down this thing and just tell it, just do whatever I'm telling you. And this button was not documented properly. It was not communicated to people. So, a lot of people worked on this. I don't want to blame anybody. Shit happens, okay? This is a very extreme case. I'm just putting it very, very to the extreme. But this brings us to our topic today, which is backwards compatibility. So effectively, they added a new feature or fix to the plane, and this broke how things worked before. So backwards compatibility, or BC, this is how we call it in open source. Everyone is about, is this BC compliant? Is effectively the ability of a system to work with a pre-existing system. So I built this thing, it plugs directly into your system. A good example is power plugs. I don't know about here, but you know, they're 220 volt. They plug into a power socket on the wall, and the power socket usually fits a certain shape, unless you're in the US and everything is broken there, and your home is going to be on fire. But the idea is that you have a system and you try to be compatible with it, even when moving forward and when improving your system. Backwards compatibility breaks are when you change your system, your new system, in such a way that it doesn't work with the previous one anymore, such as I'm going to make a new iPhone, right? The iPhone is a constant BC break. You buy a new iPhone, you have to buy a new charger. That's the law. That's how Apple makes money. The first BC break was observed when we moved from BC to AD, effectively. This is, I think, Life of Brian by Monty Python. But the idea that I also want to make clear is that BC breaks are normal. They happen. And it is really hard to identify when one happens. The problem is that we always have changes in how a system should behave. They come from business, they come from technical requirements, they come from new shiny technology, they come from new research. But effectively, the only thing that is sure is that things are going to change. This is something that even the Greeks figured out. So Heraclitus figured this out thousands of years ago. Effectively, systems change. Ideas change, opinions change over time. You're not born like that, and you're going to stay like that. You change over time by shaping your opinion and your experience. Now, let's go to something practical. Let's look at PHP, object-oriented PHP. I like to keep it in object-oriented, not because I'm advertising that you should do object-oriented programming, but it is what we are familiar with. A lot of people have been banged in their head this object-oriented programming so far. PHP object-oriented programming, short for POOP. Let's be honest, it's not the best language there. Let's look at some change in types. Quiz time. I'm going to keep it simple. I just want to, hear a yes or no from you. All right? We have a class being removed from a code base. Is this a BC break? Yes. Come on, voices. Don't worry. I won't eat you. Right? I don't bite. I mean, I'm hungry, but I don't bite people. All right? OK, so this is obviously a BC break. We cannot reference this class. Somebody may be using it. Broken. Don't delete code that may be used by others. We have a class, hello world, and we make it an abstract class. Is this a BC break? Yeah. It is a BC break because we can no longer instantiate it. New hello world no longer works. So we are breaking downstream consumers. And by the way, it does not matter if you document it or not. Any observable behavior of a system is the public API of a system. Okay? Class hello world became, well, an interface became a class. Is this a BC break? Yeah. We can no longer implement that interface. Makes perfect sense. Maybe we thought, nobody will use it, but it is a BC break. An abstract class hello world, so we take the public function hello and we make it abstract. Is this a BC break? Yeah, of course. Now we have to implement it. We are breaking every existing implementation. It has to change. We have a class hello world and we make it final. Is this a, yeah, it is a BC break, right? That's my advertising there. I say make classes final, but you can't make it once you publish them. So keep that in mind. I like final classes, but you can't add stuff just like that. We have a class hello world and we make a method final. BC break or not? Yeah, it is a BC break. Oh, why is this not showing up? Right. So we have a class user with a public username field, and we remove that field. BC break? Yeah. So effectively, I'm keeping those simple. All right? We have a protected field on class user, and we remove it. BC break or not? Yeah. And inheritance from this will break, because we may rely on this field. Class user, and we remove the private username. Is this a BC break? No. It depends. I mean, yes, in theory. In practice, PHP is a terrible programming language in which you can do terrible things with object state. You shouldn't do this. This is why it's called private. It's mine. Don't touch it. So 99.9% of scenarios, this is not a BC break. We have a class user, and we add a public property called username. Is this a BC break? Haha, yes. This is a BC break. There's a couple of reasons here. Well, first of all, did you know that you can loop over objects? It's terrible. Don't do it. Now you know. I didn't tell you if you didn't know it. Keep staying that way. You didn't hear that. Second, this breaks serialization. This applies also to private. Your object that is put somewhere in a session, right, and you try loading it, is now broken. So if you have a system that loads and serializes somehow objects into some storage and relies on this stuff, is now broken. JSON encode is broken. Serialize is broken. Okay? Unserialize is broken. It depends on what you have stored. So state is complicated. State, generally, if possible, avoid it. Difficult, but that's what you should do. We have an interface, and we add a method to it. Is this a BC break? Yeah, definitely. This is one that comes up all the time. I think I closed something like 50 pull requests of people saying, let's just add this method to this interface. Now, you can't do that. There's like, this is no longer up for discussion. That ship has sailed. We have a class hello world, and we add the public function hello. Is this a busy break? Yes, no, yeah. Depends. I mean, hello world is open for inheritance here, which means that any subclass defining the function hello may first of all break the parent class behavior. And if you have a private function defined in a child class, you're going to have a fatal error. Edge case. In general, do it final up front, easier. Don't have to reason about this. So in this scenario, we break the decorator. So we have this say something, right, initially. And then we have this hello decorator, which extends hello world, and it says say something. And here we have a broken decorator, because the decorator no longer knows anything about this new function hello. This function hello is new behavior. And in my decorator, I don't have it. Is my decorator working as expected now? Maybe I'm not seeing things that I should see in my logs, in my behavior in general. This is also broken. We have a child class that has the private function, private method, broken. This throws a fatal error, which means it's easier to find out. Effectively, it's just easier if you avoid this extends keyword. Makes everything much easier. So, you have a class added. Is this a BC break? Depends. It depends. Is it in your namespace? Then not a BC break. Put it in a global scope? It is a BC break. Because somebody may be using that symbol and namespace. There was even a discussion in PHP internals about this, about whether to use the fn keyword for the short closures, because fn was already used outside in the wild. You could have somebody define a function called fn, right? If you put it in a global namespace, now it's your problem. Actually, in that scenario, they broke it in such a way that now it is an AST symbol, so it's completely broken. It doesn't matter in which namespace it is. So it is difficult. Software is hard. Don't do software, it's hard. We have an ancestor removed from the class. So we have a class hello world extends hello, and now we have class hello world without extends hello. Is this a BC break? Yeah. Effectively, what we're doing now is we're making hello world a smaller type, which means that it no longer passes any type declaration that requires a hello instance. And that makes it relatively buggy. You will see crashes at runtime if you don't have proper static analysis. We add an ancestor. Is this a BC break? Difficult? Maybe. Remember this one where I said we added a function, method, and it's maybe a BC break? Well, there's no guarantee that extending hello does not bring in some new symbols. Maybe, I don't know. There may be bugs because of this. It's complicated. We have a class user with a public PHP 7.4 property, okay? I already use 7.4, doesn't mean that you have to use it. And we have a string field, and we make that string field nullable. Is this a BC break? Yes, it is a BC break, because now anyone reading from this field may be broken. They may receive a null value at runtime. We do the opposite. We have a nullable string, and we make it a string. Is this a BC break? No? Yeah? OK. I heard a no, that's why. Effectively, this means that anyone writing to the field that may be assigning a null value is now broken, because everyone assumes that you now require a string. Before, you can accept null. So writing is broken in this scenario. So this is about state. State is complicated. We talked about it. I'm going to put in some very grossly oversimplified concepts and definitions here. So a type A, is covariant to type B if all the values of A are also values of B. Okay, it is confusing because you have covariance and contravariance. But this means that any A is also a B, which means that the types A are covariant to B if the set of A's fits inside the set of B. It is contained or smaller, right? Well, smaller and contained, sorry. The opposite is also true. A is contravariant to B if all the values of B are also values of A. So it's the same exact concept, but we flip. So A is contravariant to B if all the values of B are contained in A. Okay? So you have to reason with this. Is the type larger means the type supports more values, and is the type smaller means it supports less values inside the same set. This is what you have to think when you think in types. So mutable state, any kind of mutable state, is invariant, which means that you need to have the same exact set before and after, and you don't have this variance at all. You need to support all the values and exactly all the values of that type, and you cannot change that. As soon as you change that, you will have a BC break when changing code. Let's go to some more quiz. Now I explained you covariance and contravariance. So we have a type B, which extends A. So every B is also an A. This is what it means, right? Okay? Now, public function do something initially accepts an A, and now only accepts a B. Is this a BC break? Yeah. It is a BC break because we are making the type smaller, because not every A is also a B. Okay? So any call to this function or method will break. The opposite. We have our type B, which is smaller than the A, smaller and contained in A. And we do the opposite. Initially, we have a function accepting B, and now we have a function accepting A. Is this a BC break? It's a trick question. It's a trick question because I left the class open for inheritance. I didn't make it final. Okay, it is a BC break of that, because of that. But changing the parameter is not a BC break itself, because now we made it larger. Any existing implementation still works. We have the opposite here. We have a return type. So we have class B extends A again. B is smaller and contained in A. And then we have this public function do something, and it returns, instead of an A, it returns a B now. Is this a BC break? This is not a BC break, because now any consumer of this method, which is expecting an A in return, will still receive an A, just a subset of A's. But it is still valid, so you can always restrict the return type. There was a big discussion about changing and allowing void methods to return something. That is a BC break, because void is a type called the bottom, which means nothing, and you cannot extend that, right? You can only make it smaller, and smaller than bottom is still bottom. Let's do the opposite. We have class B extends A. We return an A instead of a B this time. Is this a BC break? Yeah, this is a BC break. Effectively, now a consumer is expecting American potatoes, and I'm giving them potatoes. This is the idea behind it. Right? And they're like, yeah, but I wanted sweet potatoes. Sorry, you're just going to get potatoes. That doesn't work. OK, there's a nice RFC for this, which is pending implementation. So if somebody knows some C code, you can help in fixing that, which is covariant returns and contravariant parameters. And it was accepted. It's just effectively waiting for somebody to fix the implementation. The idea is that you can expand and restrict Well, you can restrict return types and expand parameter types in subclasses and implementations of interfaces. So, in POOP, object-oriented programming, okay, it is all about this variance and LSP. The variance is just a set of rules around types that tell you type needs to be bigger or smaller. That's what variance is about. And LSP tells you that you have a set of rules on how to respect this variance in inheritance. What you start seeing is you start seeing smaller and larger types when you look at signatures, and you keep it like that in your brain. Can I do a smaller signature? Can I do a larger signature? This is mostly solved in the language, but you have to think about how you change code over time. Will this break something? The idea is effectively your type X needs to always fit into type Y, where Y is your previous type. And this applies to functions, because functions are types. A function from A to B is a type already. A and B are types, and function A to B is also a type. And the LSP effectively is just this set of rules that tells you a child class should behave like the parent class, kind of, in object-oriented programming in PHP. If you can say that object-oriented programming is about inheritance, which is not. Lots of assumptions. Right, what about BC breaks in dependencies? So you have a different package you rely upon, and you have a BC break in that dependency. So you're upgrading from Symfony 1, well, Symfony 1, let's not use Symfony 1. Symfony 2 to Symfony 4, and you got a lot of inherited stuff from the framework. If you inherited from it, you get this BC break also in your code base. So effectively, you get this by transitivity. There's a BC break in upstream, you are going to get it as well. And again, don't fight windmills. Don't go for it. It's just like, don't use inheritance. If you can avoid using inheritance, avoid it. It's relatively new in general. I started shouting about this stuff in 2015. But make things final, and it will be easier. It's fine. Another thing you can start doing is declare boundaries around your code. There's this nice little symbol called internal, which is a shotgun patch for PHP not having a protected scope and private scope in namespaces. And internal allows us to declare that something should not be used in a third-party library. And there's really cool tooling in static analysis, and it came out a couple years ago about this. There's Psalm by Vimeo, there's PHP Stan, and both are reporting whether your code base relies on one of these internals. So start marking this stuff in your code base. Make only the stuff that is publicly available public, effectively. All of these checks, the rules that we just discussed, these are easy. These are the easy rules, the not so complicated ones. And they can be automated. So I wrote a tool called this ROAVE backward compatibility check. If you are an open source maintainer, you should start considering using this thing. You just throw it at your code base, and it will tell you, look, this patch cannot be accepted because it has an obvious BC break. It has a lot of rules. So if you run it, for example, here I'm running it on Doctrine. I don't remember if Doctrine, yeah, on the ORM. And we have this, I'm telling it, start checking from version 2.6.2 and check against master. And it will find effectively that an abstract method was removed. It will find that an exception was removed. And it finds that this ORM invalid argument exception changed from array to a non-contravariant association metadata. Woo, all right, that's really strange. Basically, I'm telling you, look, previously you had an array, now you have an object, this doesn't work. So if you run this on ORM, it gives you something like 3,000 BC breaks. It's gonna be fun. It's not gonna be fun for you, but it's fun for me. And just kidding, no, it's terrible. But it needs to be done. Changes in behavior are the complex part in BC breaks. Because while you see that the pieces click together, and that's what static analysis can tell you, and types can tell you, behavior can change without affecting the type declarations. So here you need a human to check this. So what you need in order to detect changes is effectively looking at what changed and making a reasoned decision around it. So here we have a filter. We add a filter. We say, is it for a web user? Is this call for a web user? And if it is for a web user, we throw, because this layer is not supposed to be used outside our local scope boundaries. This can break. There's no guarantee that a web user is not also our API consumer. So now we deploy this and we break everyone's phone app. If the price is less than 0, throw an exception. We had a scenario in which you could actually have negative invoices. In big corporates, they do weird stuff, so they send around negative invoices. I have no idea how that works, but apparently they do it. This breaks that. You can return a file selector, and suddenly the file selector selects not just files, but also directories. The type is the same. It's an integer. It's a bit mask. In practice, this breaks everything, because now you're listing more stuff for the same API calls. You can render some error message. This is very sneaky. Somebody built some tooling built in Bash, you know, some garbage written in Bash. It's all strings, strings, strings everywhere. And when they see this error message, they restart some process, and you change the exception message, you change the error message, and now suddenly their tool does no longer work because the regular expression no longer matches. It's stupid, but it can happen. You're sorting things directly. Category 3 is more important than category 2 now. Up to you. Depends on how people use their workflow. Sorting, ascending, descending. You don't know if somebody is relying on the first item of your API to take a decision. So how do you detect this stuff? By testing. This is where you need tests. You need tests. Right? There's been testing since the 1970s. Do it. When you see that a test changes, assuming you have good coverage, and I mean it, coverage, 100%, I'm not shitting you, 100%, and I'm not kidding. I know a lot of people will tell you it's not necessary. No, it is necessary. If you don't have tests, that's your problem. We told you so. A dozen times more. Been touting this since the 2010s, that testing is important. It's been a decade later, now people should be doing testing, there's no excuse anymore. So if you're not doing testing, go to your boss and tell them, please, we need to do testing, otherwise we're so much in trouble. So that's how it is. Sorry for the little rant. Okay, so when you see a test change, you know there's a BC break. Relatively easy. That's kind of how it is. That's how it should be. That's where the test value comes from. The other thing you should be aware of is this semantic versioning thing. So effectively, it means X, Y, Z, where X is ouch, arg, right? It's broken. The X means stuff is broken. So you want to have BC breaks only in these major versions, not anywhere else. And this is not always possible because, for example, the PHP project is large and has a lot of things in it. And if they change just one parameter somewhere, it will break somebody's project. The other thing is that your bug fix may be somebody else's feature. So there's this famous XKCD. When I keep this key pressed, then the CPU heats up. And then the other guy comes and says, you know what, I use this, and then when I detect CPU heating up, I press the control key automatically, so please restore this behavior. So, fair enough. There is one thing that is still avoiding all this BC break discussion, which is security fixes. If I have to break your system, the running system, to fix security, this is still better, because a broken system is better than a compromised system. So if you have to introduce a BC break, like let's disable all this kind of keys, of private keys, because we realize that all these private keys are now completely broken. That's it. You have to reconfigure your production system. It's still better than being, you know, pwned. All right. So breaking BC is important, and it's okay, but it is work for others. make it count. Make sure there's work that is valuable behind it. So announce it. Tell people that you're breaking BC. You can declare it, document it, do release notes. Consider, in general, deprecating stuff first, which gives you some time frame in which people know, when I upgrade, this is going to be gone. Consider doing release candidates and so on. And be there when you do a release. I realize nobody's paying for open source, but it is still a question of responsibility. My license of choice generally is MIT, which means it's your problem, it's not my problem. That's what MIT says. But still, you have to be a responsible maintainer. Otherwise, you're just going to piss off people. You can't just change stuff and break millions of software projects. So be there, be available. Right, fair enough. I'm out of time here. Automate BC shacks. It's better than telling people, haggling about this. And in closing, what do we say to the useless BC break? One fix. Thank you very much. Do we have any question time or?
Yeah, this year we're using, as everybody noticed, Slido. And we have top questions. So the first one is, why should we care about backward compatibility if we are not making a public library?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're not making a public library, you're still making a project with other people working on the project. So if I change how prices are calculated inside my company, then either everyone should know about it, or I should make sure there's extensive test coverage and changes that were reviewed in order to, not start losing money. If I change how prices are computed, and this means that we're selling for less than what you're buying for, then you're losing money, a lot of money. You can go out of business just because of a stupid mistake. The Boeing example is just one example. I'm selling planes. The plane will break. It's an extreme example. But this applies to services, APIs, cross-team development, even the guy or the person on the other side of your desk. You change something, you will break what they're working on. So try keeping it considerate there.
Okay, the next one is how to find a proper balance between overhead produced by backward compatibility paranoia and the development speed.
I have no idea. Honestly, it depends on how much the value comes from BC break. So stability is a very, very well-rated quality in software. So if you have a library that is extremely stable, let's take Doctrine, for example, right? So I say Doctrine now, so you can remove that question. I said it, okay? It's been stuck on 2.6.3 since, I think, almost a year now, and that's okay. There's no security issue, there's no critical bug, there's nothing that breaks the system in a very weird way. So why change it and risk breaking a lot of downstream projects if there is no super aggressive win to be done? So Doctrine 3 is going to come for some performance improvements and other stuff, plus making things easier for us, because let's be honest, it's a maze. But it is all stuff that has been calibrated. It's not just let's remove stuff for the sake of removing it. It's remove it because there's a reason for removing it. So you need to have a strong reason, okay?
Okay, the next question is, you have deleted parameter from Doctrine flush method. It's not a BC break at all.
It's not a BC break, effectively, because the flush still behaves as it would be in general. The parameter is actually still there. It's deprecated. It's going to be a BC break for 3.x. And the reason is that this parameter was used to restrict how the saving would work. And that was totally broken, as in there were really, really, really bad bugs. Let's say that you have a bank account, you save it, and then I say, I want to just save the bank account with that parameter, and then suddenly you have all the transactions attached to it not getting saved. That's a big problem.